Our story starts in a city where the price of gas is now up by 400%, so it's already really similar to our world. The outrageous price gouging is done to force the people to go electric, and one man refuses to give up on his hot rod. He gets a call from a woman named Mary and is instructed to meet her at 9 for details on his next job. This world has achieved infinite energy through the discovery of a fourth dimension, which they could harness energy from. Using interdimensional coils, new Tesla energy was able to improve the technology of the world and change civilization as we know it. A girl in a green poncho gets off a boat and heads into the back alleys of the city and into a building. In the building, there is an old man laying in bed, and he calls out to her as Mira. She apologizes for waking him up and explains she just went out to buy some medicine for him. The car guy makes his way through an underground BattleBots arena and meets up with Mary. She gives him a job to hunt down 2 coil smugglers in the city and gets paid in cash and gasoline. We finally learn that his name is Kilma as he drives off to complete his mission. The Poncho girl tries to get a glass of water, but the water is worse than the stuff you get in Flint, so she decides to go buy some water that at least won't poison anyone. As she leaves, she just so happened to stumble upon the illegal coil smuggling operation, and she gets caught by this big guy whose smile alone could have added an ugly bastard tag to this show. If you know, you know. The girl faints and gets dragged inside while Kilma watches from above. The criminals contemplate what to do with the girl, and the big guy really wants to add that tag and reaches for her, but Kilma interferes. But not because he wanted to save her or anything. He was going to beat them up anyway, so he might as well save her while he's at it. One criminal points a gun at Kilma, but gets his hand skewered instead. The girl wakes up just in time to see Kilma beat the criminals harder than a drunk uncle on a Saturday night. The last guy tries to use the girl as a hostage, but Kilma really doesn't care what happens to her and tells him to go right ahead and shoot her. Mira, with the threat of losing her eye to the gun, throws the guy off herself. She's actually an android and a really strong one at that. She is upset that Kilma was going to let her die and tries to slap him. But you know, with android power, she nearly snaps his neck. Kilma wakes up some time later and is greeted by Albert, the head of the investigation bureau, who is here about the smuggled coils. They seem to know each other, and Albert tries to recruit Kilma into the bureau, but he refused. The investigation bureau confiscates the coils, so there is nothing Kilma can do about it. The mission was a failure, but he can't get that android girl out of his head. She took some of the illegal coils, and he is damn sure gonna get them back. Kilma finds her and demands to get the coils back, but she can't give them to him. She needs them for something, so she tries to run away, but Kilma is hot on her tail. Meanwhile, Mira's father, who was the pioneering inventor for all the coils, has been tracked down by the investigation bureau. They say they want to reconcile, but years ago they broke into his house to steal his research and killed his wife and daughter. I don't think a sorry is gonna fix that, chief. Albert has the nerve to tell him to quit being angry after all that. I'm starting to hate this dude. He's had enough. If he's going out, he's gonna go out with a bang. He sets off an EMP black hole bomb that destroys all coils in the vicinity, and him in the process. At least he looks really cool doing it. He leaves the rest to Mira, as she too has her cool blown out. Kilma doesn't know what just happened, so he takes Mira's lifeless body to be examined. She is state-of-the-art machinery made to behave like a human and filled with nanomachines for self-repair. The resident robo-geek fixes her up and turns her back on, and she gets embarrassed since she is technically naked and nearly breaks Kiam's neck again. She asks to become a part of their collector team. Later on, there is a museum opening with a crowd of people outside waiting for something to happen, and at the same time, a man overlooks the event and prepares to give the people the show that they want. Mira and Kilma are also there, and he hands Mira a newspaper providing details about their target. He is called Loser. He steals artwork and live streams his attempts by hijacking the communication network. However, he has never actually succeeded in stealing anything, so he is basically this world's gentle criminal. Mira thinks that if he hasn't stolen anything, then he can't be that bad, but they are not after the man. They are after the illegal coils he is using to power his hijacking equipment. Kilma hands Mira some clothes to change into and thinks back to when she asked to join the team. She was told by her father, Dr. Urizaki, that when he died, she should follow the trail of illegal coils. And since he black hole nuked himself, he's probably dead. Mary asks about his wife, so Mira starts playing the recording she has of Urizaki's wife and daughter being murdered. Mary goes, "Ain't seen shit, I ain't getting involved, delete those logs." But then she hears that New Tesla was the perpetrator, and now she is suddenly involved. She agrees to take Mira in as a collector and puts her under the supervision of Kilma. Back to the present, Mira is done changing and asks if she looks cute, but gets ignored by Kilma. But there's no time for any of that since the main event has begun. Loser has struck. Kilma tells Mira to go find the coils while he gives chase to Loser, but he never explained how she was meant to find the coils. Kilma is catching up to Loser, and Loser asks his tech guy to get some info on him. But Kilma doesn't have a single coil on him to be identified with. On a side note, he's keeping up with Loser, who is using some kind of rocket boots. Again, Kilma doesn't skip leg day, huh? But despite Kilma's physical prowess, Loser isn't going to be outdone so easily. He has a spectacular entrance and dodges some traps laid out for him. But Kilma is still hot on his tail. They end up getting cornered by some knights and team up for a brief moment. While Mira is still wondering how to find the coils, she can't use her sensors, thanks to some signal jammers, so she heads for high ground to try scanning from there. Loser compliments Kilma's physique. He seems to know Kilma from somewhere. In a last war in the Grendel unit, there was a soldier that fought with nothing but his mind and superhuman body. That man was Kilma. He also knows about the mission that led to the disappearance of the Grendel unit. New Tesla always covers up incidents involving coils, including the incident that took half of Loser's face, body, and family. He's out for revenge and nothing can stop him, but before Kilma can say anything, the police decide to do their jobs for once and show up. Kilma is detained, but the doors suddenly close, separating him from the police. It was done by the director, who doesn't want anyone to see him become the first real victim of Loser. Kilma wonders how his revenge is connected to stealing art, but maybe there's more to it than that. Loser finds the art piece and scans it, finding a special coil in it. But shortly after, his broadcast is cut short by the museum manager. The coil is one of the numbers, but the museum manager doesn't know anything about it. He orders his robots to kill them, but the robots are using illegal coils, making them prime targets for Kilma, who makes quick work of them by stabbing the coils. The manager now realizes the amount of trouble he's going to be in if he gets caught with illegal coils and tries to hide them, but ends up making things way worse for himself. Meanwhile, Mira has found the tech guy and collected his illegal coils, but he couldn't care less. All he wants to do is make sure that his father is alright. The coil caused a dimension collapse and it looks pretty dangerous. Loser has got what he came for, so he dips, but Kilma tries to save the manager. However, he has to let him die when the demon's hands start popping out. The hands fuse the manager into a heap of flesh, and New Tesla shows up to cover up the incident. Meanwhile, Loser meets up with his son and prepares to leave, but before he goes, Mira asks him where he gets his coils from, but Loser ain't no snitch. Later, Kilma is woken up in the middle of the night by his war PTSD. Later that day, Mary praises Mira for a job well done in collecting the illegal coils on the pigeons. And you know what that means. It's a payday for Mira. She's getting a hopping 6 million yen for the job, while Kilma's getting nothing. On the ride home, Mira is giddy with excitement at her first payday, while Kilma sulks in the driver's seat. Mira offers Kilma some money as rent since she is staying in a corner of his house. Kilma doesn't want her in his house, so he takes her to go buy a trailer. She now has her own space to do whatever she likes, but there's still one problem. There's no bathroom. Later, Kilma walks in on her doing some android nano-machine exchange thing, but he wants no part in any of this anime moment stuff and just closes the door on her. The next day, Mira tries to buy some furniture for her room, and when the guy asks how she's going to get her stuff home, she causes a distraction and just carries everything on her shoulder. While she's putting everything away, she notices some children spying on her, and Kilma tells her. He then gets in his car and leaves, and Mira gets to cleaning her trailer. But while she's cleaning, the kids are still watching her. She gets a call from Mary and is informed that she's got another job to do tonight. Meanwhile, some of the kids are trying to sneak past Mira, but she catches them easily and tells them they can't come in without permission. The other kids are playing in a car wreck pile when the pile starts to fall on them. Mira notices and rushes to help, but doesn't look like she's going to make it in time. On Kilma's end, he is at a technician's shop and asks about the mysterious number coils. They are experimental coils that dip deep into the dimension W energy supply and thus can be unpredictable in their effects. Kilma gets home and is met by the police at his doorstep. They heard about someone getting pinned under a bunch of fallen cars and want to question Kilma. Later that night, he is released and goes to talk to Mira, who, well, has a very calm head on her lap considering what has happened. She's upset that the kids were terrified looking at her, which I'm pretty sure anyone would be if they saw someone get decapitated in front of them, but at least the kids weren't snitches. They didn't tell anyone that she was an android. If they had, New Tesla would have come for her already. Kilma talks with Mary on the phone and asks her to help get Mira fixed. He also wants to thank her for bailing him out at the police station. But it wasn't her that did it. It was the COO of New Tesla. The next day, he goes to meet the COO and asks her why she vouched for him, and the answer becomes clear as Shiora runs up to her calling her grandma. She'd heard from Shiora that Kilma had warned them several times, so he wasn't being reckless. She also knows about him being the beast of Grendel, But once she mentions this, he cuts their conversation short and wants to leave. But before he goes, Shura tells him that she didn't snitch on Mira for being an android. The COO has a conversation with Albert later about Dr. Urazaki's final moments and what he may have been planning, but dead men tell no tales, so they'll never know. It seems they have plans for Kyoma, however. On to the next major event, the Winds of Africa COO. Prince Salva has come to Japan. Opposite him sits Lasithy, who is his attendant. She receives word and informs him that Prince Luai has disappeared. Luai is his younger brother who couldn't be more excited to be in Japan. Kyoma visits the grave of someone he once knew but decides that it is time to move on, while Marion Kurogi, by the way, the tech guy is called Kurori, scan Mira's body, but her brain is too complex for him to understand, so he just gives up. Unfortunately, he can't look to Stack Overflow for help on this one. The only clue they have about why Mira was made is the final words of Urazaki to her, but Mary assures her that she doesn't need a reason to be made since she is not a tool to be used. But speaking of tools, where is Kyoma? Luai is running through the streets of Japan without a care in the world when he spots Kyoma and thinks he is a samurai. But as he gets close to Kyoma, the prince's guard comes up in a motorcycle man catcher and threatens Kyoma to get out of the way. Kyoma doesn't take kindly to the threat and knocks the bike over, pinning the man under it. Luai then drags Kyoma away and the other guards chase after him, but they left their homie behind. Salva is angry that they failed to catch Luai, but not because he lost his brother, because he thinks of his brother as a necessary pawn. Luai is still with Kyoma, and he doesn't plan on leaving him alone anytime soon. After realizing that the boy is from the Winds of Africa, he thinks he shouldn't have wasted his time and just let them capture him. The two of them end up at a festival and Luai wants to try scooping fish. Kyoma pays for him to do it, but when his back is turned, Kyoma disappears. Luai wants to catch the fish quickly and go after Kyoma, but he must have been hitting the gym because he breaks the entire pond. The stall owner expects Luai to pay for the stall, but he doesn't have any money, so he gives him his bling instead. Kyoma drags him away and into a shop where the people there have been waiting for him. It's where he gets his clothes and Luai goes to try some on. Tsubaki asks Kyoma why he kidnapped a child and Kyoma says it just kinda happened. She gets him a new coat and tells him not to go dying so easily. She worries about him since she's his sister. Luai comes out of the changing room in a girl's outfit. That isn't what he asked for, but the girls were just having fun with him. Then Lasithy comes busting in and orders Luai to return, but before he goes, Kyoma gives him a fan as a gift. He actually kinda liked Luai. Later, Mira shows up and greets Tsubaki. She came to get Kyoma since he has been gone for so long. Meanwhile, Luai is ordered to start the operation by Salva. He gets to Mary's place and destroys the robot guard in an instant. Meanwhile, Loser is in the Arctic looking for more numbers. Mary is angry that her guard was destroyed to send a message, and Kyoma realizes that it was Luai. A challenge has been issued to all collectors, a race on Easter Island. We get a glimpse into Kyoma's past as he is beating up some delinquents later. While it is raining, he finds a girl stuck behind a van. "Help me, step bro." He does indeed help her out, and he's surprised that he can hold a normal conversation with her. Most people would be scared of him. She introduces herself as Miyabi, and that was the start of a wonderful friendship. They are practically inseparable, and Kyoma is always there to come to Miyabi's aid, and she starts to fall for his charms as well. But suddenly she got ill, and there is only one person who can help her, Dr. Sarah Urazaki. So he tries to get to her, but gets taken down by her head of security. He manages to get his request across though. The head of security, Colin, tries to recruit Kyoma into the Grendel superhuman and uses the promise of getting Urazaki to try and treat Miyabi to get Kyoma to join. Kyoma joins and later is sent to Easter Island for the mission. His teammates are really nice, true homies if I'd ever seen them. They perform final checks and head into battle, and everything was going to plan at first, but after that, all he remembers is waking up in a hospital. All his teammates except Albert, all homies are gone. And even worse, he lost Miyabi to that day. Back to the present, Mira meets up with Kyoma for the race, and it looks like Kyoma got a new set of wheels. They get to the challenge reception and see a bunch of new faces. We've got the Mole twins, Harry and Debbie. We've got the Russian guy. We've got Discount All Might, the Hitman, and Kat and Santos, Elizabeth, and Loser are also there, and they are given the task of collecting the first coil to start working in Ground Zero. The prize is $50 million. Kyoma heads to the island with Albert so that he can bring his car along. Coils don't work on the island, but his car still will. Salva's group are heading to the island when the unexpected happens. A sphere that sucks the life out of you appears and causes the ship to crash on the island. Kyoma and the others land on the island safely and wonder what happened to Salva's team. It's not likely that they turned back, but they can't reach them. Kyoma and Mira head out with a car. We get a look into Salva's past now. He was an orphan who the king of his country decided to adopt to carry his legacy. Salva was being trained to become king, but then the king had a son. But the king still cared for Salva all the same. Although Luwai will now become the king, Salva is still happy to change the world in his own way. Back on the island, some of the other collectors manage to get out of the submerged ship, but Salva and Lasithi are close to death. As second in command, Luwai chooses to continue the race in spite of what happened. Loser also makes it out with Elizabeth and plans to get the last coil, but they have to be careful while picking their path since one wrong step could lead to death. Luwai's group finds a cabin and sets the injured down to rest there. Luwai plays a video that Salva created in case something unexpected happened. Even if he dies, they will still be paid for collecting the coil, and Luwai will oversee their actions. Just then, a robot from the war starts moving again and starts attacking them. They split up as Luwai takes care of the robot and Kat is left behind at the cabin. The orb from before shows up again, but is only interested in men so Kat is safe, but they need to figure out why it is there. Kyoma and Mira are driving down the road when two robots spot them, so Kyoma pulls off the sickest drift flashbang I've ever seen to get past them. They spot the mole twins ahead in trouble and they swoop in to save them, and the girl instantly falls for Kyoma. He tangles up the robot to contain it, but now they have to figure out a way through the debris, but the mole twins can help with that. Meanwhile, the Russian guy gets drugged by the hitman, who looks like he's going to be stealing some organs or something. Kyoma and the others come across a region of nothingness and their coils don't work and life can't last more than 10 seconds, but the car should be able to get them through in time. They go through it and barely make it out to the other side. It's a straight shot from here to ground zero, but before they can get going, Loser shows up. Kyoma gets out of the car to confront Loser. He realizes that Loser must have known him from Brendel incident, and they were most likely enemies, but he has lost all memories of that day, so he doesn't know. Loser is angry that Kyoma would forget what he did, the harm he caused, the lives he ended. He powers up his suit with the numbers he has collected and engages his energy shield, which is far too strong for Kyoma to penetrate. He cuts the ground and will not let Kyoma pass, but then that orb comes back again and Kyoma is incapacitated. We get to see the past where Kyoma was still in training for Grendel, but a war had broken out in Africa. It was an uprising which Salva had predicted. Luwai and Lasithi come up to him to inform him of what happened, and he says they should go see the king, and then he bitch slaps Lasithi for no reason. The king entrusts Salva with restoring public order, and the Grendel soldiers are dispatched to protect the tower. Grendel gets the tower secure and finds out that the perpetrator was a student of Yurizaki who was crazy. Meanwhile, on the ground, someone tries to assassinate Salva, but the shot is blocked by Lasithi. However, when Salva returns fire, Luwai was standing behind the assassin by accident and got caught in the blast. Even though he wants to think of Luwai as only a pawn, he actually cared for him. Meanwhile, Yurizaki is called before the council to answer questions about his crazy student, Haruka. Haruka, on the other hand, infiltrates the research facility with all the other students of Yurizaki and tries to convince another student, Julian, to join him as he has already convinced most of the other students. He wants the freedom to experiment without having to worry about pesky things like laws or ethicality or human rights. It turns out that Julian is Loser, but I'm still going to call him Loser though. He finally makes it to ground zero, and there is nothing there, just blank emptiness. It looks like he really does need one more number. Kyoma sees Miyabi one last time and realizes that what he is seeing isn't his reality, it's a memory. He is falling through all memories, everything. This is Dimension W, and that orb is Haruka, who wants to see the memory of how Kyoma escaped the nothingness. But before he is taken, Miyabi helps Kyoma and gives him a chance to fight back. In the real world, Mira is still watching over Kyoma and finds a picture of Miyabi. She remembers what Mary told her, that her body was originally meant to be Miyabi's replacement body, but because of the accident, she never got to use it. Just then, another robot attacks Mira, and she is determined to protect Kyoma. Mira tries to draw the robot's attention away by hacking another robot and firing shots at it, and when it comes to attack her, the mole twins spring their trap and cause the robot to be stuck in a cave-in. Mira is about to turn the robot's coil off, but then the robot sees Kyoma and recognizes him as a member of Grendel. It goes berserk and tries to kill Kyoma, but Mira gets on top of it and pulls out its coil. But she didn't calculate that the momentum of the robot would throw her into the void, but she has accepted it. As long as she was able to protect Kyoma, she has done her job. But from the darkness, Kyoma pulls her out and saves her life. He's thankful that she protected him, but tells her not to get carried away. He woke up from the dream by ripping out a machine that was implanted in his ear by the orb. The experiment that Haruka was working on involved teleportation, and Kyoma's dreams are somehow the key that he has been looking for. Just then, Luwai comes in, and he is badly injured from the assassins that attempted to kill him. His body is mechanical, but he is still just a kit on the inside, so he couldn't handle the two of them. The hitman seems to have modified the Russian guy's body to brainwash him into helping him. Loser is sitting, wondering what to do now, when Discount All Might comes falling out of the sky and challenges Loser to a fight. He knows that Loser has been collecting numbers and also has his own numbers. He is going to stop Loser from getting his hands on the ultimate coil so that he can have it for himself. Meanwhile, the hitman has cornered Kyoma and the others with his puppets that he made. The Russian guy attacks and the floor collapses, but Luwai is able to save the others. The hitman still has a surprise for Kyoma. He found some bodies in the void, and it turns out to be Kyoma's homie dog, who was turned into a puppet by the hitman. The hitman was hired to stop anyone who tried to get to Ground Zero. But why'd he have to do that to the homie? Kyoma ain't about to kill his homie, so he decides to do anything to try and save him, while Mira and the others are sucked out of a drain. Kyoma tries to free Dog from the mind control, but there was no bringing him back. He was already dead. Kyoma remembers that day that he was supposed to retrieve something, Genesis, but what did he do with it? Later, the hitman is regrouping and Luwai tries to sneak attack him, but is dodged and then blasted full of holes. Urian sees Luwai die, but Kyoma is standing right there. First, you make him kill his homie, then you kill the kid he actually cared about. Kyoma's had enough and is ready to put a skewer through his brain, but Mira stops him, and for a second, he hallucinates that she is Miyabi. He still tries to kill the hitman, but stops when Luwai pops out from his mech. It seems he has more than one body. Discount All Might is standing while Loser is on the ground, but just like the regular All Might, he runs out of steam and has no power left. Loser has finally won. He takes the final number to put his plan into action. Luwai explains that he is not a robot. His real body is in his home country, but he's got that 5G connection with less than 0.5 ping. He can control his body remotely from his country and has multiple bodies. Though Kyoma still cares about him, even if he's mostly a robot. They use his connection to tell Lastathy about the device that is making the others sleep, and Salva wakes up and they meet up on the surface. They found common ground and team up to head to Ground Zero. The goal is to find the Genesis Coil that can create something from nothing. The first to get it still gets the reward, so Cat tries to get a head start, but of course it's not going to be that easy. A robot army pops up and blocks their path to Ground Zero. Luwai uses his mech suits to stop some of the robots, and the Mole twins hold off the others, but they'll be taking the cut of the money if Kyoma gets it first. They get to the room where the accident happened, and Loser is there waiting for them. It is revealed to everyone that Loser is the Julian who worked on the transporter with Haruka, but it's a long story, so rather than telling, he'll show them. He shows them the memory of how Haruka was first introduced and how he turned from scientist to psychopathic lunatic. He was using the other scientists to test the transporter even though he knew it would kill them. Then Grendel landed on the island, and as Loser's wife was about to destroy the transporter, Kyoma stole the Genesis Coil and ended up teleporting out. But Kyoma doesn't remember any of this. His memory holds the location of the Genesis Coil, but he doesn't remember. Loser threatens Haruka about his wife, and Haruka reveals that he turned her into a monster. He used her body to create that monster, but kept her heart and hands alive to operate the biometrics. Loser has had enough and is going to defeat Haruka once and for all. The gate can't support life passing through it, and now that he has 5 numbers, he can open a gate and pull Haruka through the gate to kill him. But Haruka uses an image of his wife to catch him off guard and cut his arm off. Next, he's coming after Kyoma. Kyoma, meanwhile, is really depressed to learn that he abandoned his homies and let them to die. He had always believed that coils took everything away from him, but that was just a lie he kept telling himself. He's given up, but Mira hasn't given up yet. She's still got faith in Kyoma and reminds him about Miyabi and what she would have wanted. He finally agrees to try, but he has no way to recover his memory. Mira suggests that she goes into his head to fix his memory and promptly knocks him out with a bitch slap. In Kyoma's head, Mira strains her coil to restore Kyoma's memory, and he finally remembers that on that day he made a choice with Miyabi to let her die to keep the world safe. But when it's time to wake up, Mira is not there. He manages to wake up by himself again and comes up with a plan to handle Haruka. Meanwhile, Mira is trying to put as much distance as possible between herself and Kyoma before her coil blows up. But then Haruka grabs her, and she thinks it's a good chance to nuke him along with herself. Kyoma, however, shows up and tells her not to do anything foolish and baits Haruka in with the memory of what happened to the Genesis Coil. Haruka checks it out, but finds that Kyoma destroyed the Genesis Coil like Miyabi wanted in order to spare the world of its power. Haruka loses it and wants to destroy the world now. Everything he has done is now pointless if the Genesis Coil was destroyed, but Kyoma isn't going to sit by and let that happen. They use a cable to wrap around and crush Haruka, and Kyoma delivers the final blow with a dart. The gate starts to collapse and Kyoma is being sucked in, so Mira tries to help him, but she forgets that her coil is about to explode. and it explodes, covering the entire island in green light. And in that green light, Mira is able to see Yorizaki, who gives her a new coil and tells her to learn more about people. She wakes up falling from the sky with Kyoma and is saved by Lu Wei. The battle is finally over and everyone can go back to their normal lives, but something will stay chaotic as Kyoma and Mira continue their work as collectors. He's got to pay for his gas somehow.